YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy, the Canvas Nomad, here back with another one. And this is something I'm bringing back that I haven't done in a while, the Captain's Log. This is another Captain's Log, and this is pretty much just going to be a little reflection, um, where I've been, where I'm at today, just the evolution of it all. And as you can see, the background's still the same. I am still in Nairobi. So um, it just had me thinking like, wow, I'm here. And I wanted to do this on camera. So, you know, I felt like it was applicable given the nature of the channel. You're not going to get these polished videos and these polished, maybe once, maybe in the future, who knows? But right now, I just like it raw, unfiltered, just me versus the camera. And I'm just talking as if we're just having a conversation. That's just the way I like to do things. And the way I'm thinking right now, I was just kind of sitting on the couch right here. And I was just like, yo, like, I remember a year and a half ago. I'm like, I'm going to Africa. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna figure it out. And here I am today. And then it made me go back and back and back and back and just see kind of like where I came from. So this is kind of be like just a reflection of like where it's been, because it's been a long journey. And if this in any way, shape, or form resonates with anyone, that's the point. I know I remember being young and like being the guy that's like gonna make it, right? I had the grades, I was not really on the street that much, whatever the case may be. And like I'm not saying there's, if anybody, writes screenwriting, does screenwriting, or writes in general, writes books, whatever the case may be, outlines, there's generally like a hero's journey to fiction that you want to follow, and it kind of goes into like biography or autobiographies. You kind of want to have like a place where you're above, you fall, and you kind of rise again. And I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form that that's my life, but there's some similarities that I was just reflecting on just now, and I'm kind of like that. It's coming almost full circle, And like I said, when I was small, when I was young, I was like the nerd. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm still the nerd today, but I was like the nerd. Scholastically, I was inclined. I had the grades, and then sooner or later, middle school, I started to become somewhat athletically inclined, and then high school came, and I was now socially inclined as well. Um, it was weird because I'm not sitting there saying, I'm not trying to, like, a lot of people will try to sit there and say that their story is, well, I lost this person at this age, and my house burned down at that age, and I had to come out of the hole. Sometimes it's really not that tragic of a story for someone to feel that they are in a situation that is hard to climb out of. In fact, I would argue, maybe this is a stretch, but the word depression um, is a word that you can't define. I remember talking to a friend back in the day, and I don't know if he's like a psychiatrist, or if he can prescribe medicine, or if he's just a psychologist. But he was saying, he was just kind of venting one day when when he was talking about what he does at work, and he was like, "There's so many weak people in this world." Now, give him, he's not wrong about that. Life isn't perfect. If there are strong people, there have to be weak people, right? So he's not wrong about that. But I just think it's a little fleeting for us to judge another person's tolerance for pain based on what you have done in your life. That doesn't mean that everybody else is going through the same experience and has that same level of tolerance. There's probably people that have a higher level of tolerance. Now, maybe I'm a weak person. Who knows? I don't know. But what I'm saying is, I've looked back and reflected on things. And then that conversation kind of came to me. And it's like, I had to like judge, well, is my situation the same thing? Do I fit the shoes that he's talking about wearing? You know what I mean? I don't know. But here I am. I'm just going to reflect on that and just get my thoughts off. Because I was that kid that was going to, allegedly make it, I eventually went to college, and there I was, that was like probably some of the peak times and the worst times for me. I was I was pretty much, I won superlatives. It was a class, as a school of 20,000 kids. I won superlatives for most funny. I won most funny. And apparently, I didn't win most popular, but it was a toss up. It was even said during the ceremony. And behind the scenes, it was like, listen, you were going to get it, but because you already had this, we couldn't give two awards away. XYZ. Like, there were times in my life where I can literally say, like, it on the surface, it looked like I knew what I was doing. I had no idea. I had no idea. I had no idea. You know what I mean? And I don't want to be one of these guys that's like, well, I didn't have a father, and times was rough. But at the same time, I had to learn a lot of this stuff on my own. And those years were like my foundational years in terms of who I would say I'm today. But during that time, it's for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? I made a little bit of mistake. I kind of left college, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to be able to do what I did in college and replicate that in the real world. I went to New York Film Academy. My instructor was Paul Warner. For anybody that knows Paul Warner, he is the guy that worked with Denzel in Glory. Yeah, that was that guy. He was my instructor, and I did that for a year and a half. Of course, I saw some turmoil within that industry, so I stopped doing that. And then a pattern started to develop of just quitting, quitting, mind you, while I have, like, it's not like I'm struggling within whatever it is that I'm doing. In fact, I'd argue I'm succeeding, and then I would just stop. You know, I stopped the Film Academy because some of the let I don't want to go too far into some of these topics, because YouTube does its thing, and this is not that kind of channel. But when you start to go into the esoteric, the hidden information, I don't have to tell you what just happened in the news the past 10 years between certain names in Hollywood and the exploitation that goes on. But let's just say I experienced that within that world, which made me want to pull the trigger. Not me personally, but someone, there. So I was just like, that's not something I want to be a part of. And I pulled the trigger. So that I started jumping on YouTube. I was like, well, I know this is going to be something that works. This is like 14 years ago. 15 years ago. So this was before YouTube really became the thing that it is today. And I just saw that vision, that I know it made sense. Like, I really believe, and I've said this in previous lives, today's legacies are generally you're either having a kid, you're planting a tree, or you're writing a book. That's three ways that history has said, hey, you can, if you want to leave a legacy on earth, those are three ways to do it. Well, for me, I feel like the fourth way is a social media platform, most importantly, YouTube. I generally think everyone should have a YouTube channel. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. Now, you may not have the audience, or you may not have the monetization. Some people get into this for the money and all that stuff. And all of that would be great. I wouldn't be sitting here saying that I don't want that. But at the same time, it's just a way for me to just leave something behind. And just with that goal in mind, just doing this is accomplishing that. Now, is it polished? Is it coherent? Is it following a certain story? I don't know, but I don't really care. You know what I mean? That's not the point. Is leaving one of these behind. And when you're doing something like this, like I said, is my third iteration of trying to do this. So I saw that vision before, and I had this little show where I was two characters, and I was two twin brothers, and I had like up to like 16 episodes. It's still online. I think it's on my channel. And if not, I'll put the link to it below. But then because of life, I stopped doing that. There was a pattern of just starting. People were like, oh my God. And then I would quit just randomly. And that's where it was wondering where if this is if this, in my head I didn't think I was depressed, but like, is it depression? But then slowly in my life I started to wonder if it's nihilism. Now nihilism is kind of like the belief that nothing in this world means anything, so why, you know what I mean? It's not to the point where you want to, you know, uh forget the YouTube term self delete, but it's just one of those thought processes where it's like, well, why go to work, because it really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day, which essentially is true unless you find your true north star, right? If you find your north star, then work becomes important because that's the vehicle you're going to use to get to the next level. Well, during this time of my life I didn't have that, so it was easy for me to just quit, you know. It even goes back to even college. Like I remember I had an injury, our star receiver was out, and I had a groin issue. Now, could have I at least played 2 quarters? Probably, but I wanted to take the whole game off. That would have been my moment to be the number one receiver. You know what I mean? That would have been the moment to shine. But I decided to heal. And is there anything wrong with that? No, but at the same time, I knew in my head I can at least give 2 quarters, maybe three, and let the adrenaline rush 4 quarters, and then I got a whole week to rest. So now, could I have gotten injured more? One could argue that it wasn't the wrong decision; it was the right decision. It is what it is. But I'm just showing the pattern because, again, in high school and track, I used to run 400 meters, right? My time at the time was anywhere from 50, 49, 50, 51. That was like 51 was like where I started. And I mean straight out. I wasn't like today, that is slow. I'm hearing kids are running damn near 44. That's like past Michael Johnson times. But at the time, you know, Michael Johnson had just set the record like 70 years ago for 46 seconds. So running 49 seconds, it wasn't bad. I mean, 3 seconds is a lifetime in track, but it wasn't that bad. So they also threw me onto the hurdle. And when I did 400 hurdles, I was essentially the only guy in the school. I was the only guy in the school. I went to a school of 4,000 kids. My graduating class my total class was 1,077, and my graduating class was 970. I was the only one in the school that ran 400. So the weight was on my shoulder, right? And I did the 400-meter hurdle, and I promise you, I kid you not. The gun went off, and we ran around, and I'm jumping over these hurdles, jumping over these hurdles. I get to the second last one. I turn around, and I promise you, they're just coming around the 300 marker, and I'm already at the end. Like it was weird because it was like, where's the competition? I know the island got competition. This ain't it. This ain't it. I wouldn't be surprised if they all finished with more like a minute, you know, maybe a minute five. I was and I think with the hurdle, I did like 53 seconds. You know what I mean? 50, I think it was 53. That I only did that a couple times. So I only have that one recording. But it was just like, you know, and I didn't care about track. I was a football player. I only did it. I only did track because my friends were playing football. I didn't know they were going to sign up for football. So I wanted to stay after school too. I did track until I did a sophomore year. And then sophomore year is when I joined the football team. And then the receiver coach became the track coach. So everybody on the football team had to run track. So it just kind of like worked out. But that one year, you know, I got to I turned around. I'm like, damn. So I jumped over the second to last hurdle. And then for some reason, that last hurdle, I was getting ready to qualify for city finals. And I just could not find the energy to jump over the last hurdle. I stopped in front of it. That's when I looked back again and I was like, damn, like I'm clearly going to win, but I still messed up. Just quitting just became a thing, you know? And it kind of followed me into my years going forward into college, into, you know, into the broader life in terms of job work. But then again, I don't want to bring this kind of stuff up, but it's like I need you to kind of see the worldview that I kind of have in my head, where I just feel like a lot of things in life is an illusion. It's a gilded cage, and if you do your research behind it, you'll see. I'm not gonna go into it here, but it's just my worldview. So it's like when I see that something is meaningless and it doesn't make sense, I don't get the motivation to continue to keep going, and that's when I pull the plug, right? And then because of the mistake I made in college, that compiled with all of this stuff just made it easy for me to build a nihilistic worldview. You know what I mean? It's like, why should I do that? It doesn't mean anything anyway, you know? And there's been times where I really legitimately started to believe that. And then so I'm doing the YouTube and I pull the trigger because of life. And then I decide to do the whole nightclub photography thing. I met a bunch of people that, you know, they saw what I was doing online and they put me in connections with a bunch of stuff. So I started working with celebrities. I was working with a boxer that's from Staten Island. I did like 3 of his fights. And then one day he asked me to go to Maryland. I didn't have the money to go. So I was afraid to show that side of myself. So I told him I couldn't go. His manager never called me back. And I really wish that's something I like, that communication was had, because he probably would have paid for me to go. I mean, the guy is what? At the time, he was like 26-0. He was the upcoming boxer. He had the same manager as Floyd Mayweather. Like, it's not like I don't believe opportunities only come one time, unless like you put yourself in situations, opportunities always come. Now, whether you capitalize on it or not, that's a different story, but opportunities always come. But if you're just home doing nothing or you're just scrolling all day, then yeah, opportunities only comes once in a lifetime, like the song says. But I'm telling you, I've worked with, you know, Fabulous, Funk Flex, whole bunch of, now will they remember me? I don't know. I doubt it. I really doubt it. It'd be like one night for them meeting millions of people, especially going to concerts. They probably don't remember me. But what I do have is the footage and the audio from those moments. You know, I worked in nightclubs, gentlemen's clubs. I was around the time where promoting gentlemen's club was a big thing on Instagram. And in the beginning, this is like 2013, 2014, you know, I met this guy Jay, and we works for a magazine where we go around the whole city at night and just meet different people. Like the Mariah Mills was just she wasn't who she is today, you know, Cat Leah, there's so many of them. I remember even meeting this one girl who I'll mention later on. I'm not going to mention her name because that's kind of close, but when I get to a certain stage in life, I tell people, "Oh, I've worked with her." They didn't believe, but whatever the case may be, it just, there's a lot of things that you can do, but most people don't put themselves in situations where they can have these multiple opportunities. I'm not trying to big myself up or pat myself on the shoulder. I have not had a good journey at all, but I enjoyed it. You know what I mean? It's been a rough one. It's been a rough road, but I enjoyed it now looking back at it today. But during, oh my God. So because I was working in all these strip clubs, gentlemen's clubs, nightclubs, you know, I did art galleries. I met Martha Stewart. Didn't even know who she was, by the way. It was Gail King and Martha Stewart, and I'm taking pictures. I go home, I show my mom the pictures, and she's like, "You know who that is?" I was like, "No, it's just whoever, is some rich people looking at a painting." She was like, "No, that's actually Martha Stewart." Like, you get these opportunities and you can run with them, or you can just let them fall by the wayside. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people can say, if they had that grind, they have a similar story, and they will tell you that opportunity only comes if you go after it. And as long as you go after it, they'll keep coming. But if you just wait for them to come, yes, you may get that one opportunity, but that opportunity might not even come if you just wait. So I'm doing all of these things, and I eventually met this group of people who set me up, where I was doing their website, and there was a blog article, and I was kind of designing the website to a certain degree, and we were like working in tandem. And that's when I did my first concert, and that concert was like Fabulous, French Montana, Fred the Godson, rest in peace. Jim Jones was there. Bunji Garley was there. Like, it was a lot of people there, and I'm on the stage recording, and I'm like, wow, like I'm doing it. The one thing is, being a photographer in New York, unless you're like one of those guys, it doesn't pay. And during the time, I still had bills. I had this and the third. It didn't work. And somebody I was with at the time really didn't see a future in what I was doing. So just because, well, obviously I'm working in a gentleman's club, you can't really build something with someone, especially if you don't have that confidence to let her know like it's okay. um it created turmoil, so I needed a job, and I eventually started working for Verizon. And that's when life like really went from opportunities all the time to I'm back in the day life. I'm back in reality. You know what I mean? But even within there, I still had opportunities. My first customer was this lady who did real estate. I'll get back to her. My second customer was this guy who did sanitation. I'll get back to him. But at the end of the day, while I was in Verizon just doing these things, life just became really mundane. Like, it really became mundane. I hated it. I hated just going to work all the time, but I couldn't quit this time because now I was older. You know what I mean? I had bills, I had stuff, I had responsibilities that I had to take care of, not to mention I had taken on a workload that I had an obligation now to fulfill. You know what I mean? So I couldn't just pull the plug, although I wanted to. I hated that place. You know what I mean? But every day I went there, and sooner or later, um, due to life circumstances, I ended up having a stroke. And I didn't know it at the time, but it changed my life. It did. It took a while for it to settle in. It took a while for the dust to settle. But like, that moment made my nihilism obsolete to a certain degree, because it was like, well, if I'm in the ICU, there's one person who like fell on the floor and their whole right side was just gone. They happened to fall on the right side, so now they could not move. My right side, I had the stroke here. So my right side was just, it wasn't like it was paralyzed, like it was an acute stroke. But at the same time, like, I remember that moment. If you go on my blog, I wrote the whole thing out, but I'll just briefly say it. I'm typing, and I'm just like, yo, this is there's something wrong with the response time of my thumb. Like, what's going on? I go to work the next day, and I'm trying to write, and usually you have to write down like whatever plans is going on, and I couldn't write, so I had to get an associate. I was the manager at the time. I had to get an associate to come over and walk him through the process of what I was planning to do with this customer. And then they had to take the customers for the rest of the day because I couldn't do it. And then I went back to work the next day. I still didn't do anything. And then my boss's fiance, she was like, yo, I think you had a stroke. I was like, man, what are you talking about? I'm like, I think it was, what was it, 29? Yeah. I was like, man, I'm 29. What are you talking about? I'm definitely not doing that. No, I don't think I was 29. I was 28. I might have been 27. It was one of those ages. This is like 9 years ago. Is it? Damn, it was a long time ago. But um yeah, I'm having, I tell her, I'm like, she's like, yeah, I think you having a stroke. I'm like, I'm not having no stroke. What are you talking about? And then she's like, I'm driving you to the hospital. I didn't leave till 5 days later. That first day was when that person fell. So that's when it became real where I'm at. I'm in the ICU. Luckily, I got out of that situation, and literally 2 months later, I left the job. The second customer I ever had, like I said, he was in sanitation. He's in sanitation, but that doesn't mean that that's what he do. He owned the sanitation company. I'd probably say he's still to this day probably the richest connection I've ever made in terms of direct contact with more than one day. You know what I mean? The guy owns like half the island, him and the Waldens. It's usually them two beefing over the property where I live. And here I am working for him. You know what I mean? But then in that environment, again, I always looked like the pattern didn't just stop pulling the plug was an easy thing for me to do because, again, nihilism, depression, all of this stuff. Like, depression, for people that don't know, is like, imagine you're on trial in your head. Time is your witness, or it's the prosecutor's witness. You're the defendant, obviously. You know all the things that you can defend yourself with, but the thing is, the prosecutor is also you too, and time is its witness. So you're just going around in a loop, just arguing as to why you feel like you can't do it, but then you can also argue why you feel like you don't deserve it. And then you just live on this treadmill of emotions where you're just trying to forget the past. Regret is a huge thing. Like, I hate when people say, I have no regrets. That's a damn lie. It's a lie. It's how you live with those regrets where that phrase comes into play. Now, if you feel like your regrets don't mean, like, they're not meaningful, or it's easy for you to get over it, or you've healed from that kind of trauma, then that's fine. But don't sit here and say you don't have regrets. We're human. None of us are perfect. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, there are just certain things that you have to target in life, but there are certain things and experiences that you have to have for you to feel like you've healed from that stuff. And generally, it only comes from confidence. Like, it comes from the thing that you can say, well, I've did this in life. Now, I did all of this stuff. I had nothing to show for it. So that's where the lack of confidence came. I'm here working, you know, at a sanitation company, as a scale operator, 6 days a week. I think it was 12-hour days. Yeah, it was like 6 a.m. to 6. Um, and it was a very hostile environment. I have nothing bad to say about the people there, but it was a very hostile environment. Let's just say that. And once again, you know what I mean? It was just easy for me to do that. And remember, I said my first customer, she worked in real estate. The guy that owned the sanitation company also worked in real estate. And I told him I was thinking about getting my real estate license. So he would kind of take me out and show the lay of the land. He was a real estate investor. That's when I found out he like owned half the island. He owned a mall at the end of the island. He owned a bunch of houses. He knew the people that developed my houses. His father, gave him 50 grand at 17 and said, I'm never giving you another dime. But this was like 1960s. 50 grand is a lot of money in the 1960s, and he just made it flourish. He bought one house. The first house that he bought, he didn't live in. He lived in some, I think he said he lived in like some kind of like group situation where he was living with roommates, but he didn't know any of them, but he had a house and he was collecting money. And then that was what like started his trajectory. I think the guy is like 1.65 mil, the guy made a success for himself. But at the same time, now seeing what that level of success will do to a person where it's nonstop work, I got exposed to that. But I also wanted to pick his brain to a certain degree in terms of real estate. I thought being on the agent side was the same as being on the investor side, two completely different things. But here I am hitting up that lady that I met, my first customer, saying, hey, I want to be a real estate agent. What can I do? She was like, you know what? Go get your real estate license. When I got my real estate license, and then she introduced me to her broker, and here I was, now another rich guy. But this one, it was different. Like, now I learned like narcissism in the dating world is a huge thing. It's the first thing, I'm sorry, a woman will throw out to shame a man in how it is. Now, can there actually be narcissists? Obviously, it wouldn't be a word in the dictionary if it didn't exist. So I'm not saying all women are wrong, but it's the first thing when that a man is called when they're not getting their way with him, right? Or they feel like it's all about him, or they say, well, he thinks he knows everything. It could be just a reflection of how they feel about themselves, but they're projecting it on this man. But that's a whole nother conversation, another topic I'm not even going to get in. But at the same time, this is when I first understood what a narcissist is. And it was just something where I was like, to be in this industry, you literally have to put people down to succeed. And that's not something I feel like I can do. I can't I'm not a shark. I'm not here for, and you have to worship money as your God, because every day you wake up, you're unemployed. That's real estate. You're unemployed every single day you wake up until you get a deal. So the money's not coming in. So once you get that opportunity and you're desperate enough, you're going to steal from other people. And it's just a thing. I remember hearing a conversation where somebody on the phone said the address out loud, got a deal, and somebody ran to the house before they could, just to try to get the deal. This stuff is just not like me. And then with this guy, he was trying to teach us how to cold call. Cold calling is basically just calling random numbers, and you're just trying to see, hey, can I convince you to sell your house? You know what I mean? Can I? Are you ready to sell your house? Is the marketing behind it? But you have the script and these ways and these manipulative tactics to try to get people to sell their house before they can. I can't answer that. I'm sorry. Give me a second, please. So now you have a situation where you are dealing with people who are basically worshiping money but are desperate at the same time, because they need to feed their family. This is the industry. Now, I'm not saying all the people in this industry are bad. In fact, I'd say most are good. But once your back is against the wall, you will make decisions that will challenge your integrity. And it was just something that, again, you know what I mean? But this time I didn't do it because I started to join on the technology side. The technology side was easy for me to, it was easy for me to grasp because I've worked with a computer my entire life. So I could not manage what was going on in the real estate world. But when it came to a computer, it was easy. And well, real estate agents need a computer. So it was easy for me to transition. And I became like a technology ambassador, and I worked in a bunch of different branches. And that was what kind of transitioned me into thinking about IT. But then what happened in 2020? The world ended. Not necessarily. I have my thoughts on that situation as well. But, let's just say the world ended, right? So when that whole situation happened, I had a situation where I had a situation where I could not go in and like really hear what was going on with that whole situation. So I got really frustrated, and obviously we had to work from home. The whole real estate industry was crushed. You couldn't work because for you to sell a home, you need to be within 6 feet of somebody, and you couldn't do that, right? So it was pretty much at a standstill. And at that time, I had just got into crypto and I was still learning it and everything. And, certain things kind of paid off, and I remember the following year, I was like, you know what? If you need to change your life, you got to do something you've never done. I closed my eyes. I closed my eyes. And I was like, I'm going to spin this globe. I'm going to put my finger down. And when I open my eyes, wherever it lands, that's where I'm going to go. Well, I opened my eyes and it said Afghanistan. I said, you know what, we're gonna spin this shit again. We definitely not going there. You know what I mean? And then the second time, landed in El Salvador, and that was the first time I realized travel gave me life. Travel gave me purpose. It gave me reason to realize that like life is not to be existed, it's meant to be lived. But you can't do that necessarily at home if you have a nihilistic worldview. It's impossible. But because you go to a new environment and you are literally forced to survive because literally you don't know what's going on around you, you have to involve yourself in the present. You have to be in the present. You can't, you don't have time to think about the past or have anxiety for the future, because you have to be on a swivel. You are living presently. You're not existing, you're living. And that was the first time I realized that. And from there, because crypto was my answer on how to get there, went to a Bitcoin conference. I did a whole bunch of things. From there, I went to Costa Rica, and then the economy crashed. The economy crashed. Crypto crashed, and I had to go back home. You know what I mean? I had to go back home. But what I learned from real estate was that I was good with IT. I had a computer in my hand. I was always the computer guy at every job that I worked at. And I was like, it's about time I go get my certificate, right? And then I was doing weddings on the weekend. And that was what gave me the idea. The one of the guys that owned the DJ company, we used to do weddings on the weekend, like every weekend. We would go out to Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Long Island. We go to all over the Northeast, and we would just do weddings. He was in IT working for the government. So I was like, you know what? I want to do that too. So I ended up going to a school for IT. Sooner or later, got my IT license. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm showing you that the guy that was the little kid that was the nerd that was scholastically inclined, he didn't go anywhere. I just had no motivation. I had no map to follow. You know what I mean? That map didn't come until I literally found travel. And even then, it didn't come to me. It right away. It kind of like manifested, because one could argue the motivation for traveling the first time is fleeting, but then as I kept on doing it, that map like formulated in a way where it was like, no, this is the direction I need to go. So now when I'm following this map, it took me to IT, because now I got to figure out a way how I can get the money to travel, right? But IT isn't something that can help you travel, because let's be honest, most jobs you work 52 weeks out the year, you probably get 2 weeks off the entire year. That is not traveling, that's vacation. I like to travel. I'm not a tourist, I'm a traveler. I like to stay in places months at a time and see how the culture is, how the ecosystem is, how the economy is, how the people are living day to day. What are the differences between living here and living back home? How can I juxtapose the two, see the pros and cons, and understand that the matrix per se that I live in is different than this matrix? And don't get it twisted. Everywhere is a matrix. You leave one matrix, you're just going to another. But if you use geo arbitrage, which is a term that I have said frequently on this channel, but geological arbitrage is basically you taking the power of your currency, going to a weaker economy, and now you're doubling your money for the same time that you're spending in your country, right? The only problem with IT was I needed to report back every Monday. You know what I mean? So it was like, yeah, I got the money now, but I don't have the time. And 2 weeks is not enough for me to sit there and be like, yeah, that I'm going to go. But I did take advantage of a week while I was there. And I went to the Dominican Republic. And I went there for a reason that kind of mimicked the first time I traveled. And that's when I realized, no, travel is so much more than this. So much more than this. And then a month later, I went to Asia. Again, you know what I mean? But again, it's the journey, the struggle. Now, a lot of it is instability. You can look at the cons of what I'm saying and say, well, this is an unstable situation. This is not a smart move. This is not a this, that, and a third. Look where I'm at today. You know what I mean? Look, I'm in Nairobi. I never thought I'd ever say that, but at the same time, it's the journey that takes you to these places. It's not the destination, but you have to have a destination in mind. That's the one thing they don't finish that phrase. You have to have a destination in mind so you know where, how, what path of that journey you're going to take. Because as long as that destination is there, you have a vision, you have a map, you have a true north, you know where you're going. Most people don't know what they're doing. They're just waking up every day saying, well, I got to pay bills, so I guess I got to go to work today. Some people don't even have a job. Some people don't even want to look for a job. Some people would just rather scroll all day on their phone. Why? It's not their fault. It's how social media was built. It's built on the infrastructure of casinos. You pull the slot, you wait for the 777. If you don't get the 777, you pull again until you run out of money in your bag, right? Well, social media is worse because there is no money necessarily to scroll. You look at a post, you watch the post. If it entices you, you click like. If it doesn't entice you, you skip. So now the dopamine of the next post is what you're waiting for. You understand what I mean? And that is generally how they keep you. Again, I'm not trying to get into the Matrix conversations and the Gilded Cage conversations, but I can definitely do it. You've heard me on my previous videos do it, so you understand that there's a level of like control with it. And a lot of people will push back and be like, "Well, there's always going to be control. You got to live." And add to those people, I'll say ignorance is always bliss. This is why most smart people are usually depressed. I'm not saying that I'm the smart person that's depressed, but there's a pattern with seeing and knowing too much, because once you see something you can't unsee it. So it's better to be ignorant so you can live in bliss. You know, the white picket fence, the soccer van, the house, this and that. I can argue a mortgage could be a trap. I can argue so much about how that lifestyle really is you just beautifying your own prison cell, but that's a whole nother conversation. You want to listen to me rant about that stuff, go to my past videos. But this is just more about me reflecting, but this is just my worldview. This is how it's been easy to just kind of, and I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing. It was just my journey. You know what I mean? And by the time I had came back from the Dominican Republic, went to Asia kind of just made me realize like there's a lot more to travel. There's a lot more to life out there, But one common denominator that I kept running into was a merchant marine. Now, the first merchant marine I ran into was actually in El Salvador. But at the time, my head was in crypto. I'm like, yo, crypto's going up and up and up. I found this coin, and I think he's still the smartest owner or founder within the industry, even though his actions within the industry was very skeptical. But besides the point, I felt like that was the coin that was going to take me to the moon. And it did. That's the funny thing. It did. I bought in at 0.003. It hit 51 cents. I've never seen that much money in my life. But the coin is a certificate of deposit. So if you put your money in, you can't really pull it out until a certain promise date. So I'm seeing the money, but I can't pull it. So that's when I understood crypto works, but I just didn't take advantage of what I had because I couldn't. It is what it is. That's just the, but maybe that was just meant to show what it could be, that there's more to life than just trying to there's more ways to skin a cat and trying to make money. And there it is. So when I met the first merchant marine, he was a medic. His name was Kyle. What's up, Kyle? He was in El Salvador, and he kind of introduced me. That the seed was incepted. It was planted, but I didn't think anything of it. Now, 2 years later, I'm here in Asia, and I'm in Thailand. I'm playing spades with a merchant marine. I'm in Vietnam. I'm at a bar taking shots with a merchant marine. I'm in Vietnam. No, I'm in the Philippines taking a shot with a merchant marine. I'm in Vietnam. I'm on Bear Street, hanging out with merchant marines. And I thought it was weird because Bear Street is like inland. Hanoi is inland. It's not necessary, but these are what they do on their off times when they're not doing work. They just explore the globe. I was like, that's it. That is the answer. I came back home, and I did. As soon as I got back to America, I signed up. By the way, crypto crashed again, which forced me to come home. That was twice. So I needed a sustainable income, which is what forced me to look into merchant marines. I took the test. A year and a half later is when they called me. So during that year and a half, I got to say it was the hardest time of my life. I had to pick up a side job at FedEx. And that was probably the best, worst thing that's ever happened to me, because that environment showed me, first of all, what are you doing? That's one. Secondly, it was the wrong audience. When I would explain to people what I've done, first of all, they didn't believe me. Remember that girl I said that I met when I was doing nightclub photography? Well, in this situation, her mother worked at this FedEx, which is interesting, right? I had no idea, didn't really think about it. And one of the employees was just saying, "Oh, you did this? Do you know this person?" I was like, "Oh, snap. I worked with her one night. One night. One night." And from there, I'm the biggest liar. I'm the biggest this, that, and the third. It was just interesting because none of these people, like FedEx was all they knew. That was all they knew. One person watched wrestling and that was his life. One person fished and that was his life. They didn't really understand anything outside of what they did every single day because that was the thought process in their head, was just to go to work and not think about anything else. This was their life. So now here when I come and say, like, this is idealistically a plantation, like I'm shitting on their worldview. I'm shitting on them, their identity, them, who they are as a person. And it wasn't like I was trying to come off of that. I'm just using my experience and where I've been and what I've seen to sit there and say, yo, we can do better than this. But then that's where it's like you got to let people be people. And to a certain degree, I was, but to a certain degree, it was like, nah, like there's more than this. But they're talking as if they know what's going on in the world. They're talking about certain places that I've been that they're absolutely wrong in. But because I'm now working in the same environment as them, who the hell am I? You get what I'm saying? It's like, well, you're here, so why should what makes you obviously failed in life through the grapevine. I'm sure that's what was going on. It just is what it is. I became the pompous dude. I became the arrogant dude. And for a while, I wondered about that because I was just merely explaining my experience. And here they are because that's all they know. And this is not any slight to them. This is something like I remember I was like, listen, I'm coming here. I'm only working here temporary because I'm going to go be a marine merchant. But there was so many people waiting to work MTA, waiting for the application for 10 years. They're in my head. They're in their head thinking like, oh, this guy thinks he's going to be called for the merchant marine, blah, 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 blah. He's going to be, man, you're going to be sitting here just like me. So even one time they didn't believe me. I'm damn near 40. When they hear Merchant Marine, they're like, wait, you're gonna do that? You're too old. Who are like the swirling with the pinky out of the wine? Like they were just, it was just very, it was just, that was the first time I was in an environment where I was the outcast. It felt good. It felt good. It was needed because I've never been in that situation before. Like I said, I've always been the socialite within what's going on. So like it was something that I was like, this was, I needed to be humbled. I needed to see this side of life. I needed to see what people who this is all they know, how they view me. Now, in a different context, they probably think differently. But because I'm getting my livelihood the same way that they are, they're now judging me in a way that it's like whatever. I even remember this one person saying, "Hey, so you're really going there?" Yeah, this guy. Okay, how about you send me a picture when you're graduating? Guess what I did? Went to boot camp, did my 4 months, sent them the picture of me on the bridge of a ship driving. It is what it is. I know what I'm going to do because now I understand I have a map. My map is travel. It's to see, it's to live, it's not to exist. That is literally why I love travel so much because it just allows me to escape my head and all the things of thinking about all the mistakes I've made in the past and all the possibilities of the future, and it forces me to sit right here and live in the present. That's it. You get exposed to different cultures. Because of Asia, I now incorporate Buddhism to a certain degree in my life. And for those that think it's a religion, it's just a way of life. I don't think that, well, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. You bringing up all of these old things, but then when you study theology, you don't get exposed to all of this stuff if you don't travel and understand that the world is bigger than the bubble you live in. You don't know what the world is like until you venture off into it. And I know this is a long rant. This is damn near an hour, but I just needed to get my thoughts off in this present moment because this is how I felt. This is how I was thinking. This is what This is what drives me to be in a place like Nairobi. Never thought I'd ever be in Nairobi. A year and a half, I said that I'm going to Nairobi, and here I am doing it. I'm here. You just got to set a goal and set something that says, hey, you know what? And my goal is I'm going to all 7 continents before 40. Now, however I can get that done, I'm going to get it done. Now I know what I got to do. Period. And because I need a job that allows me to take up both the most time, being a merchant mariner just made sense. It just made sense. It just made sense. You work 6 months out the year, you're off 6 months out the year. You know what I mean? Now you can sit there and then you're getting a budget that allows you to really live and try to experience that culture for a long time. Not to mention the combination of geological arbitrage. That wouldn't have come to me if I didn't go through crypto. A lot of the things you go through in your journey, see, this is why I brought up Buddhism, because in Buddhism, life is suffering. Everything is suffering. You know, you have the Naroda, the Maga, you have a whole bunch of things, the 4 steps to escape, the 4 noble truths that you have to escape to come out on the other side, to at least alleviate the stress or the suffering that you're going to, because nothing is ever going to be happy. No marriage, no job, no friendship, no lifestyle. It's never going to be perfect all the time. You have to understand that for you to have gain, you have to go through pain. For you to have success, you got to go through struggle. It is a duality of life that is something that Taoism can teach you. Yin and yang. You can't get away from them. If you cast a light on a wall, there will be a shadow. You can't escape. You can't escape duality. It just is what it is. You cannot escape duality. There's duality to everything. And in some sort of alchemical process, here's one thing that made me realize, like, you really can do anything that you want. Like, it's insane, and I don't mean to sound like this salesman or it's just a realization that I've had in my life, that I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just human, so I'm gonna make mistakes going forward in life. But I could tell you, everything that you see in this room right now was once an idea in somebody's head. It wasn't until somebody got to work to make that idea a reality, which means that everything that is not organic was once an idea. Why can't your ideas come true? Why can't your ideas come true? Seriously. If everything in this room was once an idea, why those ideas can't be yours? I told myself that I am going to travel, see the world years ago, delusional, without any way of knowing how I was going to do it. And now I am 2 continents. I have 2 more continents to go before that is a reality. This is before I even went to my first one outside of North America. And again, this is not a bragging thing. This is not meant for me. I'm just trying to show you that life is so much better when you take control of it instead of just building somebody else's dream. Because when you are an employee, that is what you're doing. Now, I don't want to sit here and be like, well, everybody can't be bosses. I'm not asking you to be an entrepreneur. I'm not asking you to do all these things. What I'm saying is find a lifestyle that works for you and push the pedal to the metal to the utmost fullest. You do that, you will win. You will win. As basic as it is, or as extravagant as it is, no one can tell you how big you can dream. No, let me tell you something. Don't let someone else stop you from your dream because they were afraid to chase theirs. That is what I learned at FedEx. That is literally what I learned at FedEx. You have a bunch of people sitting here that just, well, this is my life, and maybe I get to go out and go to the feast on Saturdays. That, like, life is so much more than that. Life is so much more than that. Life is so much more than that. So much more than that. You don't get much time. So use it. And I hate this expression of YOLO, but live like it's your last. Now, obviously, you have to put some planning into that because you can't just be out here YOLO on it. But at the same time, use this life that is given to you so that when you look back on it, you can sit there and be like, well, wow, I had a hell of a run. I had a hell of a run. But if all you know is what you were afraid to chase, what did Will Smith say? The best things in life are on the other side of fear. If I didn't get on that plane that day and go to El Salvador, I would not be here talking to you right now. This is what it is. And this is not ego talking. This is not, and if it's coming across that way, I apologize. But it's just me just telling you what I've experienced. And this all is like less than 5 years. From the time I went to El Salvador, from the time that I became IT, worked real estate, all of this nonsense, to today, where I'm a merchant mariner in Nairobi right now, 5 years. Because once I got off that plane, and one could argue COVID was the reason why that happened. I didn't start traveling until 2021. That's why it's 5 years. But COVID, I hated what was going on there during that time. No. I have my thoughts on it. I'm not going to express it here. I'll wait for another video. That's not the point of this. But I'm telling you, if you want to change your life, you can absolutely do it. You just have to want to do it. You got to be sick and tired of being sick and tired of changing it. I'm not saying my journey is over. It's not. And I've already come up with the next goal once this goal is over, because once I hit 7 continents, now what? Well, I've already come up with the next thing, and I'll wait till that to bring it up. I need to finish this one first. But until that happens, I know that I can never quit again, because I have a higher goal in mind. And that's what you need to find. You need to find your true star, your North Star, your true calling. I'm not even sitting here saying find your purpose. No, maybe that is motivational mumbo jumbo that people found. And I kind of do believe you can have a purpose. I think that I'm not opposed to the idea. But what I can say is you just need to find the thing that you are never, ever, ever going to get tired of doing. You find that doesn't have to make money for you. It just allows you to keep the vehicle that makes the money for you to do this. If it being a mechanic is what it is, then you can live the simple life. But guess what? You're doing what you love to do. You do that, you will be fine. I'm not saying that I figured out the answer in life. I am still nowhere near successful. I am still not the person that I want to be, but I guarantee you I can look in the mirror today and be like, you know what? I'm not going to front. I like where this is going, opposed to 5-10 years ago where I would look in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. It's just what it is. And the first step that you have to do is just admit that where you're going is not the right path. Once you admit that, and you find the courage to sit there and be like, you know what? I'm going to change this. I promise you, your life will change. It's alchemy. That's all it is. It's an alchemical process that says, hey, I'm going to manifest what I have in my head into reality. And you do it. It's kind of the law of attraction, but law of attraction is a little bit marketed. Law of attraction is what this basically is, but inherently it's alchemy. That's what it is. And once you get that out of, get that thought process of whatever you think can be real, whoever you want to become can be real, that is when you will absolutely take control of your life and win. It's your boy, the Canvas Nomad, and this has been another Captain's Log. If you made it this far in a video, you, my friend, are appreciated. Peace.